What if you died, but you reincarnated, except when you look at your body you are now a literal f***ing sword? The story begins as a man is run over by a car. I guess truck-kun is in high demand these days. And he reincarnates in another world. We see a tiny girl with cat ears, but that's not him. Instead, he reincarnated as the sword of this cute girl. As he is sitting in a carriage with his owner, he explains that meeting her was by chance. After getting run over by a car, he opened his eyes to see dragons in the sky, realizing that he had reincarnated. But when he looks at his shadow, he realizes that he has reincarnated as a f***ing sword, furious that the iSky manga writers lied to him. But he hears a heavy voice wishing him luck on his journey, confusing the sword, but the voice disappears, so he brainstorms on what he should do. Remembering the characters who were reborn into a fantasy world get superpowers, he tries to check his abilities, and he unlocks the appraisal skill. He learns he has an intelligence weapon with self-healing and telekinesis skills, so he's f***ing hyped that he's at least a strong weapon, but the sword starts getting full of himself, thinking he is a legendary weapon. However, the poor sword gets groped by goblins, and like every other man, he too has preferences, and one of them is not to be wielded by a goblin. He looks down at them for not being able to pull him out, mocking the goblins for their weak-ass pull-out game, but a goblin spits on him, so he uses his telekinesis, flying in the air and killing the goblin that spit on him. Surprisingly, he doesn't feel bad about killing him, so he slices another one, but he feels something different, realizing that he cut a crystal inside the goblin. For some reason he glows, but he feels stronger, so he kills the rest of the goblins, slicing their crystals, and he notices his stats have increased, but he wonders what the memory skill is, since it increased when he slayed the goblins, when suddenly, he hears a voice stating that his current memory level is 10, and Siri asks if he wants to set his skills, so he replies that he does. Remember the first goblin whose crystal wasn't crushed? Now Mr. Sword is stabbing the f*** out of every inch of his corpse to crush the crystal. By crushing the crystals, he gets new skills, so he thanks the goblins for a great meal, but he gets tired, deciding to rest back where he spawned in, but he feels lonely without an owner, so he decides to get as strong as possible before someone wields him. Meanwhile, a girl named Fran is looking for a way to get stronger, but her enslaver with 2 cockroaches on his face for a mustache hits her with a stone, telling her to stop slacking off, but she just raises her hand at the sky, wishing to get powerful. The next morning, Mr. Sword is flying in the sky using telekinesis, but it's consuming a lot of mana, so the max he can fly is 3 minutes. Suddenly, he encounters an octopus-like monster that is into some weird shit. He grabs the sword and starts draining its mana, but the sword easily kills the creepy octopus, gaining the float skill. By combining float and telekinesis, he can now last 5 times longer than before. Looks like I need to combine those skills too. He finds a caterpillar-like monster, but it doesn't notice him, so he slays it easily, acquiring its crystal and thanking its corpse for a good meal. Mr. Sword has gained some more XP points and is fully determined to become the most powerful sword in this world, but despite getting stronger, my man is getting lonely, and it's not like he could hug a tree or something to cope with it, so he desperately needs a wielder. He discovers a goblin's lair and decides to slaughter all of them, but as he slices off the goblins at the entrance, he discovers a goblin king with an unusually large head. Being a kind sword, he decides to relieve his poor neck from carrying this massive dome, slicing off its head. The little goblins are confused, but he kills the goblin mage before they can do anything, finally gaining the fire skill he has been looking for, and he is sure that his wielder will be really happy with him. Meanwhile, Fran tries to defend a fellow slave from her master, but her neck lock forces her to follow her master's orders, making her bound down. The next morning, the bald pregnant master insults Fran, calling her a useless species that can't evolve, but Fran gets angry, so she tries to hit Fat Voldemort with a rock, but her collar stops her again, so while sitting in the cart, she reminds herself that she needs to get stronger and evolve. That same morning, Sword-kun is resting in his sword holder. He found out that the further he goes from this holder, the stronger the monsters are. The higher the levels are, the more crystal XP he gains from defeating them. But he has the self-recovery skill, so even if he's broken into pieces, he can always regenerate, making even the monsters at Area 4 easy for him, so he moves on to Area 5. The first boss he encounters in the south of Area 5 is the Glutton Slime King, but by using his Bestiary skill, he locates the crystal in the slime's body, deciding to use his strongest possible attack to slide right into his body and crack the crystal. He gained the instant regeneration skill and dimensional storage, but he wants more skills, so he challenges the boss of the east, the Doppel Snake. He was really f***ing easy, but Mr. Sword is disappointed with his weak-ass naked doppelganger skill, so he decides to fight the boss of the North, who happens to be a knockoff Blastoise, but this one also turns out to be an easy one, thanks to his earth magic that put the tortoise on its back and crushed its crystal. Finally, he meets the boss of the West, the Tyrant Saber Tiger. He flies around, but the tiger can jump in midair and has high defensive stats, so Sword-kun decides to slowly poison it, and after a few hours, the tiger falls. Since all 5 areas are cleared, he proceeds to the forest beyond Area 5. He rests on the ground to look for stronger prey, but this time, it's him who is the prey. He tries to fly away, but he notices that he can't use telekinesis or any other skill because they keep getting absorbed by the ground. It has been 3 days since he got stuck, and the forest not only drains his magical energy, but also prevents it from recovering, so he hopes that a beautiful elf warrior will pass by and rescue him. It has been 10 days and Mr. Sword has come to terms that even if a trans or a goblin rescues him, he wouldn't mind, but now a month has passed and he's crying for literally anything to pull him out of there. Nearby, Fran's carriage gets attacked by a twin-head bear, but Baldy and Cosplay Guy order the slaves to stay still so they can act as bait to buy them time to escape. The bear starts murking the slaves, but one of the slaves falls over pregnant Baldy, trapping him as he gets killed by the bear. With Baldy gone, the collars turn off, allowing the slaves run for their lives, but Fran is still trying to act strong, so she picks up a log and hits the bear with it, but the bear f***ing launches her. Everyone except for Fran is dead, making her wonder if it's her time to die too, but just then, the sky clears up a bit and shines a light of hope onto a sword. Fran touches the sword, but she hears a voice, and Mr. Sword tells her that he is the one speaking. With a dead serious face, Fran says she is shocked, making Sword-kun think she is emotionally stunted, but he asks Fran to pull him out so he can help her, so she pulls and pulls, barely managing to pull him out and dodge the bear's attack. The sword tells Fran to use her will to equip him, so she equips Sword-kun, but she is actually shocked this time, since through skill sharing, she obtains many high-level skills, and he promises he will help Fran get strong. Fran charges at the bear, but it is no match for her as she feels like a warrior who has slain countless beasts. She easily slays the monster and wins, so she goes to put the sword back into the ground, but he stops her, offering her to be his wielder, but Fran hesitates because her master would take him away. The cosplay guy who ran away like a little girl is back, as Fran tells Sword-kun that she can't deny his orders because of the collar on her neck. The cosplay guy beats her, telling her to hand over the sword, but Sword-kun breaks his neck using telekinesis and burns the slavery contract, freeing Fran from her collar. She thanks the sword, so he asks her again to wield him, but she thinks about it, so he thinks she will say no, but she says she would be honored, stating that she needs to get stronger and evolve. We learn she is a black cat, and no black cat has ever been able to evolve. Fran introduces herself, but Sword-kun doesn't have a name yet, so she names him Teacher. Her creativity skill is at -1000, but with that, their journey begins. We learn that beast men strive to become stronger by evolving, so they take a lot of pride in evolution, but black cats have never been able to evolve. Fran's parents took her with them on their journey to evolve, despite knowing that no black cat has ever been able to evolve, but Fran's parents weren't able to succeed, as they died before they reached their goal, but Fran has decided to complete their unfinished quest. She is now slaying as many monsters as possible with Teacher's help, and she's a bright kid who can master a skill with a little teaching, but more than that, she's a sweet kid who always cleans Teacher and praises him, so he is fully determined to dedicate his new life to making her strong and powerful. Just then, Fran's cat senses tingle, so she rushes towards the danger. A dog beast man yells at an adventurer named Randall to hurry the f*** up, but Randall is surrounded by goblins and barely holding them off. A goblin burps in his face, but suddenly gets decapitated, as Fran finishes her double slash. 2 goblins attack from behind, but Teacher uses his aura blade skill to kill those noobs, so the other goblins run away. Before Randall approaches Fran, Teacher tells her to keep their telepathy a secret, because a talking sword is not common. Randall offers to give her a ride as a token of gratitude, stating that they are heading to the city of Alessa. It's less of a thank you and more of a, please protect us from the goblins till we reach our destination. Since they have nothing to lose, Teacher and Fran agree to guard him, but Ugly Doggo is not happy about it for some reason. On their way to the city, Randall shares that there is trouble on the Great Wolf Plain, guessing that it's a turf war among the monsters, so this caused the weaker goblins to move away from their homes and closer to the busy roads. He adds that some stories say that the S-rank monster, Fenrir, died on that plain, but weak monsters spawn there because his mana still lingers. Fran asks him about a sword in the center of that plain, but Randall has no clue about Teacher. Randall praises Fran for easily taking out the goblins, asking if she's an adventurer, but Fran and Teacher have no fucking idea what an adventurer is, even though it's pretty self-explanatory, so they ask for more details while Doggo with a kickable face is still acting as if it's that time of month for him. Randall tells her that monsters are ranked based on how big of a threat they are, meaning the people who take requests to take quests to hunt these monsters are adventurers. Adventurers are ranked based on their skill level from G to S. Fran is interested in this adventurer stuff, so she asks how to become one, and Randall shares that she has to get registered at the Adventurers Guild. The guild will also buy materials obtained from slain monsters, so Teacher explains to Fran's simple mind that they are going to get some money and Fran will be eating well now. Fran's ears tingle again as she says that she wants money, but Ugly Dog whispers that a weak black cat can never be an adventurer. You know what else she can never be? A depressed as fuck overweight moron on 4 legs. Meanwhile, a goblin runs into a cave and sees a mage goblin casting some kind of spell, when suddenly, goblins start to summon out of nowhere. Elsewhere, Fran and Teacher have finally arrived at the city of Alessa, and as a thank you, Randall pays their entry fee. Fran is fucking hyped to see so many people, but 2 guys laugh at Fran for carrying a sword bigger than herself, so Teacher says to ignore them as they head to the Adventurers Guild. Teacher checks the other swords that everyone is carrying, but his pride takes a real hit when he realizes that the majority of these swords have higher attack power than him. Bro is now crying, but Fran immediately comforts him, telling him that he saved her and that he has a lot of skills, so Teacher is overjoyed to be wielded by Fran. They arrive at the guild as Miss Four Eyes is smiling at a customer, but she is mentally telling everyone in here to piss off and die. She reminds herself that she has to remain a smiling receptionist of the guild, but just then, a tiny girl approaches her, saying that she wants to be an adventurer, but Nell knows that a kid like her won't be able to last 5 minutes against a monster, so instead of turning her down right away, she decides to give Fran a reality check, telling her that she needs to fight their examiner in a mock battle to register, but she warns her that she might get injured and the guild will not take responsibility for any injuries. But Fran doesn't give a fuck, so Nell leads her to the battleground where the scary examiner is ready to teach Fran a lesson. The roof closes, as the great and powerful Donadron introduces himself. Donadron tries to intimidate Fran with an intense introduction, as most people run away before even fighting Donadron because of his intimidation skill. However, Fran doesn't even realize he's using a skill, while Teacher identifies all of the skills of this giant ogre, realizing that he's way too strong for an entrance exam, but the test begins as Donadron attacks right away, but Fran manages to dodge the attack. However, Donadron tails her and attacks again, but Fran barely dodges the attack this time. Even Nell realizes that Donadron is going way too fucking hard on Fran, as all she can do is dodge or block. But Teacher casts a buff spell that increases Fran's strength and agility, so Fran launches her counterattack, managing to bruise Donadron's arm, but he instantly heals it back to normal. Their weapons strike again, and Fran is fully determined to walk out as an adventurer, so Teacher restricts Donadron from using earth magic spells, following up with a high-class fire spell as Fran uses a sword art to strike him. Nell can't fucking believe that a little girl can use multiple high-class spells at the same time, and Donadron admits defeat as Fran emerges victorious. However, Nell hasn't seen even the high-rank adventurers fight like this, so she leads her to Guild Master Klimt. Klimt asks Fran how she is able to use mid-tier sword arts at such a young age and how she can cast spells without saying incantations aloud, but Fran puts her hands on her mouth, saying that she's not going to tell anything, and we learn that Fran and Teacher discuss that if the wrong person finds out that he has an intelligence weapon, they might use it to spot their weakness. Klimt respects her decision, but immediately tries to forcefully use his Identify skill to uncover her secret, but Teacher has already cast an identity protection spell. Fran asks if he's not going to let her become an adventurer, but Klimt says that she has already passed, and even though a few things about her don't make sense, the spirits are calm, so she doesn't have any ill intentions, and we learn that Klimt uses spirit magic to determine if a person is good or bad. Klimt and Nell lead her to a strange-ass room where Nell asks her to touch the crystal, this way she can learn what kind of mana she has and pick a class. A class gives the person different skills and abilities, but a shit ton of classes are available for Fran to choose from, making Klimt shit his fucking pants, so Fran chooses to be a Spellsword and receives her guild card, officially making Fran an adventurer. Fran wants to sell some stuff to Nell to get some money, but to make sure Nell doesn't find out that they have dimensional storage, Teacher tells Fran to pretend that she is grabbing the stuff from her item bag, but hella low-ranked and mid-ranked monster pelts shoot out of it, giving them an A+ for being discreet. Fran receives 195,000 fucking gold coins for all this low-ranked trash, but they got a good price because of how neatly the monsters were cut. Fran and teacher head out to look for a room, but ex-mercenary morons stop her, so Fran ignores them and passes by, but they surround her, accusing Fran of not making all that money fair and square. Harry Dildo insults the whole black cat species by calling them stinky cats, and he accuses Nell of giving her a special price, but Nell smacks him, saying that nothing cheap happens in this guild. She got a better price because she did a perfect job of skinning the monsters, but she forgets that she's speaking aloud, and tells the ex-mercenaries that they should piss off and die. He attacks her, but Fran blocks her attack while teacher tells her to avoid fighting inside the guild, but Dildo insults the black cats again, so Fran slices off his feet, stating that she won't let anyone insult black cats, and they all attack her, but she single-handedly crushes them. The other adventurers cheer for Fran, as Nell then tells these gym influencers that they will need to pay to clean up the mess, but Ginger with no legs asks how he can clean with no feet, so Nell says they won't get any healing services until their bill of 100,000 gold is paid. Fran and teacher head out to buy some gear, but an old man watches them, stating that they can't fool his godsight as he learns that teacher is an intelligence weapon. Fran and teacher are looking around for armor shops, but Fran is enjoying seeing a market for the first time, so they wander around. Teacher overheard that Alessa has a highly skilled blacksmith, but just then, an old geezer stops Fran, asking her to visit his store if she needs armor. Teacher uses his appraisal skills and finds out that he's a dwarf named Gurus, learning that he is the honorary blacksmith of Granzel, but since he is the legendary blacksmith they were looking for, teacher suggests they go along with him, but to keep their guard up. Gurus leads them to their shop, while some adventurers are unhappy seeing Gurus offer his legendary stuff to a little girl, but Gurus shares that these nobodies just like to resell his stuff, so Fran asks what made him decide to sell his stuff to her. Gurus reveals that he was also at the Adventurers Guild when Fran made those guys wet their pants, so he concluded that Fran was worthy of buying his stuff, gifting her with a beautiful set of armor that has high defensive stats, and Fran is happy to get her first set of armor. Teacher notices that all the swords hanging on the wall have stronger attack power than him, so he tells Fran to ask Gurus to show them his swords for research purposes, but Gurus is surprised by the request, asking why she wants to see other swords when she already has an intelligence weapon, adding that it's his first time seeing one. Fran gets cautious, and they wonder how this old dwarf knows about their secret, but teacher is more just confused because he can block others' appraisal skill, so Fran nervously asks how he knows about this. Gurus laughs and shares that his eyes are special, explaining that his godsight cannot be blocked, especially when it comes to weapons. He says that teacher is a sword that cannot be compared with the ones on the wall because he's much stronger, but teacher says he's lying because their stats are better, so Fran tells him to calm down. Gurus realizes that the sword just talked, and Fran vouches for Gurus, saying that he doesn't seem like a bad guy, so teacher directly talks to Gurus, saying that those swords have a higher attack stat, but Gurus explains that it's because of something called mana conductivity. He shows them what it is by picking out a sword and telling Fran to unsheath teacher. He tells Fran to imbue 100 mana into teacher and strike this sword with 450 attack, so she does, and teacher easily breaks the sword into pieces. Gurus shares that his mana conductivity is A rank, which is really f***ing strong, so teacher has regained his self-esteem. Gurus estimates that he will be fine even if Fran imbues 1000 mana into him, so teacher decides that he likes the old man, telling Fran that she shouldn't worry about him, but Fran says that's what she f***ing said from the start. Gurus asks who made him, so teacher explains that he has no memories of that, but he asks Gurus if he can tell him anything with his godsight, so Gurus shares that he must be constructed by a divine blacksmith, as they're the only ones who can make weapons that can tear the skies and lands apart, but there were only 5 divine blacksmiths confirmed in history. Teacher asks if he has a legendary weapon, but Gurus reveals that he's not, adding that the only legendary weapon he has seen was Ignis, the Sword of Flames. Teacher asks Gurus to make a scabbard for him, offering him some of the monster stuff he has in his storage. Gurus is impressed with all of the D and C rank monster skins, saying he can make much stronger armor and weapons with these, but since Fran and teacher lack money somehow, Gurus suggests paying him through these materials, so teacher agrees. He tells them that they can have the scabbard ready in 3 days, but for the rest of the equipment, he would need a month, so they thank him and step out of Gurus' shop. Teacher hesitantly asks Fran if she needs some undergarments, but Fran says that they are not necessary, but shopkeeper overhears them and drags them into her shop. She helps Fran with everything she needs, so teacher suggests buying some cooking equipment and spices for their trip, and for Fran, this is a top priority. They arrive at the place that the lady from the clothing store suggested, but it is called Sabretooth and the owner is f***ing massive, so they're a bit confused, but he greets Fran and shares that this is indeed a general store. Teacher uses his appraisal skill on him, learning that he is a merchant named Rufus and has 150 strength, which is way too much for a simple merchant, but he explains that he used to be an adventurer like her, until he took an arrow to the knee, so he retired 3 years ago and opened up this store. Fran and Teacher are delighted at the wide variety of cooking stuff and spices, but Fran is done wasting time and really wants to eat some shit ASAP, so they head to an inn. After showing her guild card to the front desk, they are easily able to book a room. For Teacher, their room is normal and decent, but for Fran, who was enslaved for a long time, this is nothing less than heaven. She has never been in such a comfortable room before, so it feels like she is dreaming, and she gives all the credit to Teacher for bringing so much joy in her life. Teacher promises her that she will always live in a comfortable place from now on and eat delicious food, promising to protect her until she evolves. He asks Fran what she wants to eat, and Fran immediately says that she wants meat, so Teacher makes her delicious fried meat, but when Fran tastes it, she shits her pants at how f***ing good it is. Fran finishing housing all her food, so it's time for a strategy meeting, because they will start to take on quests from tomorrow. Both Fran and Teacher want to use Teacher's XP points for recovery magic, so they can also use instant healing like Dodge Rond. He asks if she has any other suggestions, but Fran falls asleep, and elsewhere, the goblin army is ready to set out. The next day, Fran and Teacher collect potion ingredients, but they think that the quests for G-rank adventurers are easy and boring. Fran is so not enjoying these lame-ass tasks because she wants some action. Just then, Fran hears the sound of swords, so she follows the sound to find a group of adventurers surrounded by goblins. The adventurers didn't expect to find this many goblins, so they think they are f***ed, but they decide to make a final stand. Their mage prepares to give his life to save their friends, but the goblins in front of him suddenly die, and his friends think he is incredible, but he says it wasn't him as Fran lands in front of them, telling Teacher that it's burning, so Teacher says he's also getting fired up, but Fran clarifies that she's talking about the forest that caught fire, so Teacher immediately puts out the fire, deciding to rely on earth magic for now. They easily take down all the goblins and hobgoblins and even levels up, but she realizes the adventurers are injured, so she uses her new healing skills to heal the injured adventurers. They are surprised to learn that Fran is only a G-rank adventurer, but since she saved them, they offer her the loot as their token of gratitude. Fran accepts the request, but decides to take only the loot from the hobgoblins. One of the adventurers suspects that the presence of hobgoblins might be a sign of a goblin stampede, explaining that this is when a lot of high-ranked goblins appear due to the birth of a goblin king. An army of goblins led by a king has a threat level of D, but if a goblin queen is born, the king and queen's offspring would all be hobgoblins, making the threat level rise to C. The adventurers head back to report it to the guild, but Fran insists on staying and fighting, so she heads into the forest, slaying each and every goblin in sight. She keeps leveling up until the goblins surround her. Teacher thinks there are too many, and their well-coordinated attacks are becoming too much for Fran, so Teacher suggests retreating, but Fran reminds him that she's not a fucking wimp, so she will never back down. Fran fights the remaining goblins on her own, and Teacher suggests she should retreat as she is getting tired, but Fran ignores his suggestion and continues fighting. She is frustrated that she can't use the Teacher's power to the fullest, so she moves forward, slaying the incoming goblins, and Teacher realizes that until now, he has been thinking of only protecting Fran, not realizing that she wants to get stronger with her own power. Fran asks Teacher to continue supporting her, so Teacher encourages her to focus on slaying goblins while he takes care of healing her, and Fran slays 3 goblins with 1 attack, but fails to notice an arrow shooting towards her. It slices through her cheek, and she falls, but Teacher immediately casts healing spells that help her recover. He makes sure she's okay and tells her to charge, as Fran slays the goblin who shot at her, continuing to f*** up these low-level noobs, but she finds herself surrounded by goblins, so she takes it as a challenge to kill all of them. By the time the sun goes down, she has slain every last goblin as she stands victorious on a heap of bodies, but she suddenly hears Siri, who tells them that she has reached level 12. Teacher is so f***ing proud of her after she nearly committed mass genocide, claiming his little kitten has become a ferocious animal, but she is covered in blood, sweat, and bruises, so Fran returns to the city to meet Gurus, the blacksmith. Gurus is surprised to see them so exhausted, asking who she just fought. Fran tells him that she and Teacher are coming from a goblin adventure, however, she has lost count of how many goblins they slaughtered, so Teacher tells Gurus they killed over 100 of those weak-ass noobs. He asks Gurus to repair their armor as they will be going on their first dungeon mission, apologizing for the short notice request. but Gurus says he can take care of it, and while he works on their weapons, we learn what happened after Fran committed genocide. While they were in the forest, they spotted a cave believed to be the goblin's nest, so Fran decided to go in, but teacher stopped her, saying that the sun is setting and she is exhausted, which will make it difficult for her to fight the swarm of goblins inside. He suggests they return and gather the reward from their goblin massacre by absorbing the skill points from the crystals, but Fran senses someone approaching and finds the team of adventurers walking towards them. They are shocked to see so many goblin bodies, asking Fran if she single-handedly took care of them all, so she says she did, and they can't f***ing believe it, but she states that she found a goblin nest nearby and takes them to the cave, where one of the adventurers says there was no cave until a month ago, so it must be a dungeon that just spawned in. Another adventurer intervenes, telling Fran that the guild leader has called for her, and assure her they will guard the dungeon until she returns. Fran travels to meet the guild leader, Mr. Klimt, and tells him about the situation, but Donadron gets furious that she doesn't remember how many goblins she killed. Mr. Klimt asks Donadron to calm down and turns to Fran, asking her to get her f***ing numbers right. Fran thinks a little before the teacher telepathically suggests a number, and she tells Mr. Klimt there were about 130 goblins and 20 hobgoblins. Mr. Klimt asks her if the goblins fled during the fight, but when Fran tells her they fought till the very end, Mr. Klimt turns serious, saying it is a grave situation because if the goblins didn't flee, that means they didn't have a place to retreat, so the nest is full of powerful hobgoblins. She tells them what the dwarf adventurer had told her about the nest being a dungeon. Hearing this, Mr. Klimt gets up from his chair and asks Donadron to assemble all F-ranked adventurers and above. He asks Fran to join the team, deciding to make an exception and promote Fran to an F-ranked adventurer, surprising both Fran and Donadron, but Fran tries to argue, saying she hasn't completed the required number of quests to rank up. Mr. Klimt points out that it is a state of emergency, so they shouldn't worry about specifics as they need talented adventurers to handle this situation, and they certainly cannot let Fran, who single-handedly almost committed mass genocide, stay at rank G. Gurus has been patiently listening to this long-ass story and is truly impressed. He uses 4 crystals and places their armor in the middle, and using arcane blacksmith skill, he casts a repair spell, and the armor repairs itself to 100%. Fran is amazed at how quickly the crystals repaired her armor, and she asks Gurus what a dungeon is, so Gurus tells her that a dungeon is a punishment from the god of chaos to test humankind. They usually appears out of nowhere and have a magical core that is protected by a dungeon master, but it is said that whoever challenges the dungeon master and defeats them is rewarded with gold, other valuable resources, and magic weapons stored inside the dungeon. Gurus finishes the repair while Fran asks if the god of chaos is good, but Gurus doesn't believe she is good or bad. Thanks Gurus, that's really f***ing helpful. Fran puts on her armor and thanks Gurus for his help. Gurus tells teacher that his scabbard will be ready before they leave for the dungeon, and wishes them success on their mission. Once they're home, teacher checks Fran's stats now that she has upgraded to level 12, but he notices something strange. She has been given the new title of Goblin Serial Killer. Teacher realizes how tired she is, so he pats her head, asking her to rest as she has worked hard, but Fran says she needs to take a bath, and asks him to join her since he has blood on him. Teacher quickly turns away and tries to refuse, but Fran doesn't give a flying fuck and takes him along even as he screams like a little girl. They reach the bathhouse, and teacher asks Fran if she likes baths, considering cats hate baths, but Fran replies that baths are fucking unreal, saying she used to bathe every day with her mother. Fran scrubs teacher's back, but they are interrupted by Miss Nell, who tells Fran that bringing weapons to the bathhouse is prohibited, and teacher especially gets embarrassed upon seeing Nell's jugs. Later, they sit together at the cafeteria, enjoying a pleasant drink with snacks, when Fran apologizes for bringing her sword along, but says she wanted to clean him because they fought together and he was as dirty as her. Nell chuckles and lets it slide, wishing her the best for her upcoming quest to the dungeon. Nell suddenly looks annoyed and curses the vice captain, who refuses to send the city's knights to help the adventurers. She wishes Amanda was there, and Fran remembers hearing the name, so Nell explains that Amanda is an A-ranked adventurer and their guild's ace, but all of the higher-ranked adventurers, including her, have been sent to investigate why the powerful monsters have disappeared in the Morale Plains. Teacher is very well aware that he murked all of the monsters in the Morale Plains, but didn't think his actions would cause such chaos. Fran asks Nell about the god of chaos, and Nell tells them that it all began with the appearance of 10 main gods, the gods of the sun, moon, sea, land, fire, storm, forest, and beast who created the world. Meanwhile, the god of the underworld created the laws of the world, and the gods had a bunch of lower gods who carried out their duties. The goddess of chaos was the last remaining god of the 10 main gods who spreads chaos in the world, but she does it so the people of the world would continue to get stronger and grow their civilization, and the dungeons are one form of chaos she created. Fran asks if there is a god of war, and Nell says there was, but he became evil after being obsessed with power, and was defeated by the other gods who scattered the pieces of his body across the world. By the time Nell finishes her long-ass story, Fran is burnt out from trying to keep up, so she is taken back to her room, where she finally rests. The next day, Fran is well rested and ready to complete her genocide, so she visits Gurus, and he shows them the finished sheath. Teacher immediately removes his cloth and tries the sheath, which fits perfectly, but Gurus tells him there's more to it than meets the eye, showing them a secret button that will allow the sword to release himself. Teacher thanks him for his help, and Gurus wishes them the best as they start their journey towards the dungeon. Fran and the teacher reach the dungeon and join the rest of the adventurers. Dodron is the leader of the team and informs them that the cave is indeed a dungeon with an alarming number of goblins inside, explain that their mission is to stop the goblin stampede from breaking out by defeating the Goblin King, Queen, and Dungeon Master. But before Dodron can finish explaining his plan, an army of goblins attacks and forces the adventurers to split up as they fight them, but Goblin Serial Killer takes it as an opportunity and rushes towards the cave's entrance. However, the cave still remains blocked with goblins, so Fran uses her airwalking skill to pass over the goblins, and everybody can't f***ing believe she has that skill. She jumps down as Teacher unleashes fire magic, and Fran follows with a second attack, while Teacher uses an overly OP skill to eliminate about 60 goblins. Fran charges into solo the dungeon as she leaves the rest of the adventurers to handle the goblins outside, although she is unaware that the Dungeon Master's skill is random monster summoning, and he was able to summon an S-class monster. Fran runs deeper into the cave, while Teacher instructs her not to overdo it like she did the last time, and in the worst-case scenario, they can use the teleportation feather they bought to instantly transport them out of the dungeon. Suddenly, giant goblins appear before Fran, and Teacher guides Fran on which goblins to slay for their crystals, leaving the rest for the adventurers to fight. But the goblins they left behind follow them and keep coming at them, so Teacher decides to use his parallel thought ability, creating 2 magic circles that shoot fire javelins, eliminating all the goblins. He remembers making Fran use this ability once before, but it gave Fran a piercing headache, so he doesn't think humans can use this skill. They continue through the dungeon, finally spotting the king and the queen, but they are surrounded by hobgoblins. Teacher tells Fran that he will eliminate the noob goblins first so she can take care of the unguarded king and queen. But when he attacks the goblin army with a fire javelin and fire blast, Fran finds that the king and queen are dead. She's depressed, calling Teacher a meanie and a stupid f***ing prick, because she was hoping to fight the king and the queen. The remaining goblins flee, so Fran and the Teacher continue their quest to find the Dungeon Master, as neither the king nor the queen was the Dungeon Master, and they come across a door which leads deeper into the cave. But the door closes behind them, and suddenly, thousands of glowing dots appear before them. They are army beetles, and they attack Fran and Teacher, but after analyzing the beetles, Teacher realizes their crystals carry hella XP. Fran is determined to defeat them all, and 30 minutes later, they have defeated thousands of them and absorbed their crystals, but they've hardly made a dent in their numbers, so Teacher looks closely, finding that the army beetle leader is summoning reinforcements with his kin summon skill. Teacher releases a triple blast, and Fran takes down the leader, leveling up to 17 and acquiring the kin summon skill. They come across another door, but Fran suddenly gets nervous as she feels powerful mana coming from behind the door. Teacher decides it would be best to use spell buffs to increase her stats, using resistance, sensory boost, physical boost, and auto heal. She feels much stronger, but Teacher takes it a step further, telling her that if she makes it out in one piece, he will make curry for her. Fran has never heard of it, but she's f***ing hyped. The final door opens, and Fran and the Teacher make it to the core of the dungeon where they meet a mysterious f***ing gigantic monster. Meanwhile, back in the guild, Nell meets Mr. Klimt, worried about Fran, but Mr. Klimt reassures her, saying that it is a newly spawned dungeon, making it unlikely that there will be very dangerous monsters in it. However, Nell can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. Back at the den, the adventurers have made their way to the last door, but they can't open it. They fear that Fran is facing the Dungeon Master alone after they found the dead king and queen. Meanwhile, in the core, Teacher uses his analysis skill on the demon and finds his stats to be f***ing insane. He is level 30, making Teacher wonder if this demon is a greater demon, but with all of its unknown skills, Teacher thinks that something is not right. The greater demons have a threat level of B, yet the demon before them possesses the strength to destroy an entire nation. Suddenly, a high-pitched voice attracts their attention. They find it is a tiny goblin with noob-level stats, and somehow he is the actual dungeon master who instructs the demon to finish off Fran. Fran and teacher are amazed the dungeon master can talk like humans, but he yells at Fran for eliminating the king, telling her he is going to take her life and summon another king using the dungeon core. Suddenly, the dungeon master almost gets hit by the demon's attack, who asks him to shut up and calls him a useless master. The dungeon master wonders why the demon never obeys him, and the demon declares that nobody can control him. The demon unsheathes his dangerous-looking sword, while teacher asks Fran to be careful as he channels 500 MP into their attack. The swords clash, and teacher realizes the demon sword's mana is twice as powerful as him, but Fran uses an aura blade to knock the sword out of the demon's hands and charges at the demon, but the demon smiles and easily blocks the attack, sending Fran crashing into the ground, making teacher realize he lured Fran into attacking him. The demon suddenly vanishes and appears behind Fran, cutting off her arms and sending teacher flying with Fran's hands still clutching onto him. The demon strikes, but teacher blocks the attack and quickly creates a firewall around Fran, who screams in pain. He uses his greater heal ability to reattach Fran's hands to her arms, and Fran is amazed, thinking that she almost had to park in the blue spots at the supermarket for the rest of her life. She apologizes for being careless, but teacher tells her it is not her fault as the demon appeared from her blind spot. However, the demon doesn't give a fuck and comes at her repeatedly, appearing out of thin air in all directions. While Fran concentrates on the demon, teacher tries to find out what kind of magic the demon is using. He realizes the mana is coming from the ground and not from the air, concluding that the demon is using her shadow to hide himself. Fran dodges it, while teacher activates Vibration Fong and Demonic Poisonous Fong. Fran attacks the demon and finally manages to land a hit on him, but the demon is very powerful and smiles at their attempt. Teacher is shocked as his poison spell is usually the ace up their sleeve, so Fran asks what they should do. Teacher admits that things are not looking good for them, so they should use the teleportation feather to get out of there. But Fran refuses to lose until she can taste the curry that teacher promised. She relentlessly attacks the demon, making the demon acknowledge her speed and fighting skills, but it also makes him want to take the skills from her, so he charges a spell while teacher warns Fran to be careful. Suddenly, a spirit hand pierces through Fran's body as the demon tells Fran that his extra skill is Skill Taker, which allows him to take other people's skills for his own. He looks at Fran and explains that he has taken her sword skills, which means she has lost the ability to fight against him and will now die. The demon charges at Fran, but Fran dodges him and manages to land an attack on the demon, taking the demon by surprise. He doesn't understand how Fran can fight when he clearly stole her sword skill. Teacher is surprised too, but he realizes that Fran shares sword skills with him, meaning the demon can't take borrowed skills. They're hyped, but the dungeon master summons the strongest level goblins to defeat them. The goblins attack Fran, but they blow up out of nowhere as the demon turns to the dungeon master and warns him to stay out of his business, or else he'll rub one out right here right now. Teacher feels bad for the dungeon master, but they have to focus on winning. The demon says he's done living in the dark dungeon and plans to get out of there and destroy cities, so he activates his ultimate move, Darkness Voltecker, and Fran takes a direct hit. Meanwhile, the tremors from the attack can be felt outside, where the other adventurers are waiting. Donadron has had enough, and he attacks the door, but it won't budge. He's afraid that Fran is in danger, ordering the others to break the door. Fran miraculously escapes the attack, and teacher gives her the teleportation feather, asking her to get the f*** out of there. Fran admits she is no match for the demon, but she can't let the demon get to Alessa, destroy the guild, and hurt innocent people, so she asks him to lend her his powers to face the demon as the monster attacks her with his darkness spear. Fran dodges it, making her way closer to the demon, and teacher realizes Fran didn't want to get stronger only to evolve, but also to protect others, so as her teacher, he can't hold her back now. He tells Fran they will not be going anywhere until she defeats the demon, and Fran thanks him for understanding, as she continues dodging all of the demon's attacks while teacher analyzes the enemy once again to find a weakness. The demon attacks Fran one after the other, not giving her time to rest, but teacher notices that the demon is purposely avoiding hitting the dungeon master. Suddenly, the teacher asks Fran to attack the dungeon master, so she fires a spell, making the demon throw himself in front of the dungeon master. Teacher remembered Donadron telling Fran that if the dungeon master is defeated, all of the activities inside the dungeon will come to a halt, and the monsters inside will die, so they relentlessly start attacking the dungeon master, but they are running out of mana, so teacher asks Fran if she will risk it all with one final attack. Fran says she will, so teacher explains that after every attack, there is a 3-second gap before the demon fully recharges his mana. They let the demon attack them, and using wind magic, Fran throws teacher at the demon. The demon believes they are aiming at the dungeon master, but suddenly teacher casts his ultimate move, teleport, and shifts his trajectory by 90 degrees to aim for the demon's crystal. The demon realizes what is happening and stops the sword with his bare hands before it can hit him, but teacher increases his mana and speaks to the demon, taking him by surprise that a sword spoke to him. Teacher channels all his mana into piercing the demon's crystal, finally shooting through his chest as the crystal breaks and the demon passes away. However, all of teacher's mana is depleted, and he shatters, leaving Fran in shock. She rushes to her teacher and cries while hugging him, but she hears him say how delicious the crystal is, and immediately stops hugging him. He asks Fran not to assume he is dead the next time something like this happens, explaining that he can replenish his mana after absorbing the crystal's mana and self-recover. Fran wipes her tears and calls teacher a f***ing asshole, but she's happy her teacher is alive and hugs him tightly. Meanwhile, the dungeon master plans to just summon more powerful demons, but Fran appears and cuts off dungeon master's staff. However, the dungeon master is not afraid as he shows her his bracelet, which will not let him die, but Fran instantly severs his hand with the bracelet, and the teacher absorbs it into his collectibles. Before Fran can strike the dungeon master to kill him, teacher tells her he is already dead, as the light from the orb vanishes, and it shatters into millions of pieces. The dungeon becomes a brick room after it comes to a halt, and Fran rejoices. Donatron and the other adventurers finally can cross over and come running towards Fran, asking if she is alright, while teacher adds the demon sword to his collectibles before anybody can see it, and they are amazed that Fran defeated the dungeon master on her own. They are even more shocked when they see the corpse of a demon with a B threat level lying nearby. Donatron is relieved that Fran is doing fine, but he picks her up, activating his intimidation skill, and yells at her for acting on her own and going into the dungeon alone. Donatron believes he must reinstill the 10 rules of an adventurer into her, making Fran sweat profusely. Lifting her by her head, he delivers his infamous scolding to Fran until the light left her eyes. While returning, teacher telepathically talks to Fran and tells her she has reached level 25. She has also earned a new title of Behemoth Devourer, and her stats have also leveled up, making her as strong as Donatron, while teacher's stats have also gone up, bringing him to level 8. He asks Fran what she'll be doing with her newly acquired skills, but stops upon seeing Fran's angry face. She tells teacher he's a pussy for only thinking about their skills while she was being chewed out. But teacher knows exactly what will cheer Fran up, and reminds her of the curry he is going to prepare. Fran lights up as she hears teacher talking about preparing a special curry dish to celebrate their victory, and she asks the teacher what curry is, so he explains curry is a stew with vegetables and spices served with steaming rice, but to make it special, they'll add beast meat to it. Donatron looks back at Fran, probably confused at who the f*** she is talking to, but now that her mood is good, teacher asks her again about the skills she wants to improve, and she chooses to upgrade her sword art and sword technique, increasing them both to level 10. Since she has maxed those skills out, she has gained Master Sword Technique 1 and Elemental Sword 1, which will allow her to enchant her sword with different elements. Fran imagines using the sword enveloped in flames and says she can't wait to try it out. She reminds the teacher of the skill taker skill they acquired from the demon, and teacher says there is a possibility that they might be able to take skills from not just the monsters but humans too, so they instantly max it out to give them a 100% chance of taking someone's skill, but it can only be used once every 432 hours. Teacher is f***ing hyped, and Fran proposes stealing Donatron's intimidation skill, but teacher talks her out of it. Later that evening, Fran stands before Mr. Klimt, who has received the quest report. He starts by showing his gratitude, apologizing that he didn't expect there would be a B rank monster in the dungeon. Even though Fran soloed the dungeon and went against the rules, they can't ignore the fact that if she had not defeated the demon, there probably would have been a lot of casualties. So, he decides to let the matter slide. They have also submitted the demon's body to the guild, so Mr. Klimt is grateful as it is top quality, and it would have raised a lot of questions if Fran had decided to keep it to herself. Mr. Klimt says he has one more question for her, asking what happened to the demon's crystal, as teacher thinks this is expected as the crystal from such a powerful monster is highly precious. Mr. Klimt looks at her suspiciously, explaining that many countries would want to get their hands on it, and the whereabouts of such a precious item will draw a lot of questions. Teacher realizes they can't get away with claiming the crystal for themselves, but Fran tells Mr. Klimt that the crystal was destroyed when she killed the demon. Mr. Klimt sighs, saying he believes Fran has no evil intent, so he will let the matter slide. What a pushover. Suddenly, Mr. Klimt's office doors open, and a sus adventurer with purple makeup claims that Fran is lying, warning Fran that she can't hide from him as he knows everything, leaving Fran and teacher wondering who this new lame-ass side character is. The pregnant motherfucker with a shoelace mustache accuses her of lying, so Fran asks who he is. Mr. Pig sprays perfume on himself as he reveals that he is called August Allsand, the vice captain of the Alessa Knights, and Fran and teacher remember that he is the same weak-ass captain whom Nell wanted to choke on his mustache and die. He reveals that his unique skill, Essence of Falsehood, allows him to see through all the lies, but what he can't see is anything below his gigantic f***ing stomach. Fran rejects his accusation, as teacher uses his appraisal skill to find out that August is at level 30, but his stats are incredibly low, which is why teacher couldn't detect his presence. Teacher asks Siri about his Essence of Falsehood skill, so the voice reveals that it's a skill that detects lies, but it also makes their own lie more convincing, so Mr. Bacon can get away with his lies and has been abusing this skill a lot. He asks the guild master to hand over Fran to the knights, but the guild master politely tells him to shut the f*** up, explaining that she can easily wipe the floor with his elephant-sized ass, so instead August tries to get the loot from the dungeon, but the guild master again tells him to shut the f*** up, as the crystal rightfully belongs to Fran, and the loot will be distributed among all the adventurers who fought hard for it. Teacher cheers for the ballsy guild master, while August tries to justify that the knights couldn't be dispatched for this mission because they were too busy circle jerking, adding that such a lowly job should be left to lowly adventurers, but Klimt is not happy with August's attitude, so he reminds him that the adventurers risked their lives on this mission, so he better not insult them. Klimt is annihilating August in the battle of words, so August uses his trump card, asking if Klimt is trying to go against him and his father, Count Holmes, as teacher realizes that there's a serious power struggle between the guild and the knights. But Fran decides to step in and resolve the matter, offering 4 goblin horns to August to stick up his ass, but August feels insulted by this offering so he smacks the fingers away. Teacher praises Fran's provocation, but turns out, she was being deadass about offering 4 goblin horns, so she asks teacher if she can kill this bastard. Teacher tries his best to calm Fran down, and suggests another alternative. They can see that this fucking guy is useless, so they decide to use their new skill on him. Fran raises her hand towards August to use the skill taker ability, as 2 gigantic hands emerge and go straight into August. Fran successfully acquires the unique skill, Essence of Falsehood, and Court Etiquette. She immediately tests it out, telling August that she's 100 years old and asks him to use his skill to determine whether she's telling the truth or not. August tries hard, but is utterly humiliated when he can't use his skill, so he runs away, and even leaves a smelly-ass fart on his way out. Nell enters Klimt's office, and Klimt apologizes to Fran for having to put up with August. He reveals that August bought his position through money, so he's nothing but a weak-ass fraud who leeches XP off his knights to increase his rank. The only reason he got this far is because he's the son of Count Holmes, and he's from the family that governs this city. Klimt warns Fran that August may try to come after her, but he thanks her for her accomplishment in the dungeon. He asks Nell if everything is prepared, and informs Fran to stop by the counter to collect her rank-up rewards, explaining that Fran will be promoted straight to rank D, even though he wanted to promote her to rank C, but that big of a jump would make the other guilds sus. He informs Fran that they have added a bonus on top of her reward as well, so Fran thanks them with her unique court etiquette skill, shocking Klimt and Nell for how f***ing solid that curtsy was. On their way out, teacher tells Fran not to overuse the court etiquette skill or it will raise suspicions, although, he's glad that Fran is not only maturing physically, but mentally as well. Nell hands over a f***ing huge bag of gold to Fran and congratulates her on becoming a D-ranked adventurer, but just then, a pile of hair with some dwarf in it praises Fran and introduces himself as Elephant. The rest of the adventurers gather around Fran and offer their congratulations, but teacher is getting uncomfortable with all these middle-aged men surrounding them, so he suggests that Fran throw a party for everyone, so Fran announces that drinks will be on her tonight. Everybody f***ing explodes with joy, and later that night, Fran talks in her sleep about curry, so teacher assures her that she can have her f***ing curry tomorrow. But meanwhile, August is no longer a noble piece of shit, he's just a homeless piece of shit now. The next day, teacher dozes off and dreams about some ladies telling him to touch something. No, it's not a wet dream, but some kind of sign. Teacher wakes up, but he finds it strange that he dozed off, because it has never happened before. They decide to camp by the lake, and teacher tells her it's curry o'clock. Teacher is planning to cook enough so Fran can eat curry whenever she wants by using their dimensional storage. They spend 100,000 fucking gold coins on this feast, so Teacher steps out of the sheath to begin the action. After an editor fucking day, they finally finish making the curry, and Fran absolutely fucking loves the shit out of this magical meal, claiming she was born for curry. A week passes as Fran heads back to the city from a quest, but the gatekeeper interrupts her. He reveals that pig boy August Allsand seems to be looking for her for some reason. Turns out, that pile of shit with a mustache made a fool of himself in front of his royal family, so his father is very angry with him. They thank the guard and Fran walks back to the inn, but Teacher senses something and tells her that someone is following them, so they decide to lead the follower to somewhere private to kick his ass, but there are actually 2 people following them. They reach a quiet spot, as August, whose chin is 8 months pregnant now, reveals himself. Fran mistakes him for being a zombie, but Teacher clarifies that it's August, maybe. August accuses Fran of ruining his life, but Fran asks who he is. August gets confused and wonders if he got the wrong person. However, her huge-ass sword gives her away, so he tells Fran to stop fooling him. August calls Fran a dirty black cat, and he summons Jurin, another ugly side character, but Fran gets terrified at seeing a blue cat in front of her as blue cats are the sworn enemies of black cats. Meanwhile, a few flying monsters with their aesthetic 2023 haircut try to attack an elf girl, but she whips them down easily. Teacher hasn't seen Fran this agitated before, so he asks for the backstory. Fran reveals that hundreds of years ago, these blue fucks deceived the black cats, which resulted in black cats being reduced to the lowest of all beasts. Since then, blue cats have been targeting black cats and selling them off to slave traders. Jurin uses his perception skill to find out Fran's level, and upon realizing that she's at level 25, Jurin laughs. August cheers for Jurin, saying that he is a hero of the Battle of Lutz, as Fran is trembling with anger and fear. Jurin takes out his sword and walks beside her. He claims that black cats are destined to be hunted and killed by the blue cats, so he attacks Fran, but she dodges with her sword. Fran tells Teacher that she was attacked numerous times by blue cats when she used to travel with her parents, but Jurin kicks Fran away and tells her that a black cat tried to resist him before, so he cut off all of their limbs. Fran cries overhearing the torture tale, as Jurin puts his foot on Fran's head to show his dominance. Just then, Teacher comforts Fran, reminding her about all the hard work she put in to get stronger, and assures her that she can easily f*** up this bastard. So Fran snaps back to reality like Eminem and asks Jurin about how many black cats he killed, but Jurin replies that his illiterate ass can't count over 10, so he killed at least as many black cats as the number of his fathers. Fran is furious, so she lunges and snatches away his sword, storing it inside their storage. Jurin the Generous gave away his arm as well, as Fran precisely follows the torture steps Jurin was telling her about, and goes for his foot next. The brave blue cat is now crying like a little bitch, so Fran responds to his ungratefulness by cutting off his other arm and foot as well. Now that he has a nub, Fran is ready to deliver the final blow, but Teacher offers to take this burden off her hands, as he thinks she is too young to kill, but Fran insists that to change the current situation of black cats, she has to grow up so she can evolve and show the surviving black cats that they can evolve as well. She knows that if she leaves this creepy fatherless idiot alive, he might kill more black cats, so it's better to deal with him right here, right now. Teacher respects the f*** out of her decision, so he promises to lend his aid whenever she needs it. With that, this side character's story comes to an end after having a screen time of 10 minutes. With Jurin gone, Fran proceeds to take care of the remaining swine, but a ball of water appears in front of her. It's from Klimt, who tells Fran that he can't allow her to kill Auguste unfortunately, like really unfortunately. The water spirit leads Fran back to Klimt's office, and he asks Fran if she finds this water spirit cute, but Fran asks if he's talking about this gross f***ing slime ball, offending Klimt and his weird fetish. Klimt goes on to lift some spiritual balls and scares Fran and Teacher, but Klimt calms them down, sharing that the adventurers should have escorted him back to Count Holmes' mansion by now, because Count Holmes secretly requested the guild to look for his pig-shaped mistake. August was placed under house arrest for f***ing with the higher-ups, but his crazy ass decided to steal a hefty sum of money and run away, so it's safe to assume that he will spend the rest of his miserable life in a dungeon, so Fran doesn't need to worry about him anymore. However, Fran is actually thinking about the secret request, which technically means that there should be a reward for her, so Klimt assures her that they will pay her, and with a bonus if she keeps this matter a secret, that way she doesn't get caught up in royalty politics. Fran promises that her lips will remain sealed, so Klimt tells her to pick up her reward from now. Fran turns around to head out, but she gets bounced back by the plot. The elf lady with the whip from earlier arrives, as she bends down with her cannons to pick Fran up, but after seeing how cute Fran is, she declares that she's Fran's mother. Teacher is confused as fuck, so Fran wants to clear up the misunderstanding, but she's struggling to breathe right now. Teacher finally realizes that Fran has literally said every fucking episode that her mom is dead. The elf lady notices that Fran is resisting, so she tells her that this shouldn't be her reaction, so she lets her go, and tries again to adopt Fran by telling her to call her mama, but Fran refuses the fuck out of her, so the lady asks for a kiss in exchange for letting her go. Teacher asks why Fran isn't breaking free if she really hates this creepy loaded lady, but Fran replies that it's because the elf is too strong. Klimt tells Amanda to stop it, and introduces Amanda to Fran, saying that she's the A-rank adventurer who happens to be the fucking ace of this guild. So Teacher checks her stats, learning that Amanda is 58 years old and her list of skills is as big as her bazookas, so he realizes that even if they go all out against her, they won't be able to defeat her. Amanda shares that she already knows about Fran as she has been the talk of town lately, and Klimt reveals that he sent Amanda to investigate the problem in the Maru Plains, the problem Teacher caused by killing every boss monster. Amanda steps forward to brief Klimt, so Fran tells them bye-bye and gets the fuck out of there. The next day, Fran runs into Amanda in the forest while collecting herbs, and in the library where Fran was asking about the dungeon in Almut, and at the candy store, and at the library again, and while walking down the streets, and even in the window of her fucking room. Fran can't even bathe in peace, so she asks Nell about how to get rid of this fucking stalker. Nell shares that Amanda may be weird and cringe, but she's huge. I mean, she's a good person who has been running an orphanage since she was very young, and was even given the title of guardian of children by God, so her motherly fondness for children is approved by God. Just then, Amanda sneaks behind Nell and asks her if she's shit-talking her behind her back. The whole guild turns hearing Amanda's name, because many of them haven't seen her in person before. Amanda tells Fran that they have been running into each other a lot lately, but Fran reminds her that it's only because she's literally just fucking stalking her. Amanda whispers to her that whenever Fran has sorted her feelings, she can feel free to call her mama, but Nell saves Fran and informs Fran that the guild master asked for her, so Fran aggressively knocks at his door and enters the office. Klimt requests her to properly announce herself before entering, but Fran politely tells him to shut the fuck up since he literally summons her every fucking day. Klimt shows her the crystals he collected back when he used to be an active adventurer, explaining these crystals are all from D rank or above monsters. Teacher wants these crystals, so Klimt offers to give 2 of them to Fran if she agrees to accept the request. He wants her to investigate the spider's nest, a dungeon near Alessa. Fran is interested, so she asks for all 10 crystals in exchange, but Klimt's jaw drops and tells her that he can't give away 10, so he proposes 3 crystals, so Fran tells him 8, but Klimt says 4, so Fran walks away, but Klimt caves and agrees to give 5 crystals, so Teacher says she's a fucking beast at negotiating, and Fran asks Klimt why he wants her to go to the dungeon this badly. Klimt reveals that many adventurers are not happy with her promotion, and there are rumors spreading that Klimt is a fucking lolicon, lol, so he needs Fran to accept this request and show everyone that she's worthy of the D rank. He offers to give her a pass to enter the dungeon in Almut that she asked the librarian about, explaining that being the guild master, Klimt knows everything. So Fran accepts the offer, but just then, the whole fucking door is launched into the wall by Amanda, who tells him that she will be going as well, because most of the adventurers taking part are male, so she doesn't want them taking all the glory. But in reality, she just wants to win Fran's heart. Later that day while enjoying her curry, Fran asks if they will get to fight strong monsters inside the spider nest, but Teacher reveals that the dungeon has already been cleared, and the request only wants them to collect the materials inside the nest. However, she shouldn't feel bad because they scammed the fuck out of Klimt, and they will get the dungeon pass to Almut. Teacher absorbs the crystals and acquires 45 XP points, and he notices the kin summoning skill that they acquired from the army of beetles also leveled up, so they look forward to getting stronger in their second dungeon. But the next night, Fran faces Amanda, and Teacher wonders why their path to get stronger had to bring them to this point. The morning of the spider nest expedition, Fran arrives at the meeting spot, but someone attacks her with balloons bigger than August's chin. Oh, turns out that it's only Amanda hugging Fran. She asks Fran if she slept well, but Fran reveals that she had a nightmare where Amanda came into her dream, as Teacher notices a guy staring at them menacingly. Just then, a golden-haired adventurer announces that this investigation will serve as a promotion test for 2 A-rank parties, and introduces himself as Cruz Riazel, the leader of the Azure Guardians, a C-rank party. He's the examiner along with his fellow members, as Cruz asks the guy on the rock to introduce himself. Crag gets up and introduces his party, Dragon Roar, fucking lame. He looks at Fran with a somewhat irritated look, and Furion introduces his E-rank party, Forest Eyes, and finally, Amanda introduces herself. Lastly, the MVP of this mission, Little Cat Girl, introduces herself as Fran, but Crad clenches his teeth again. Teacher notices and wonders what the f*** is wrong with this guy, but right on cue Crad accuses her of bribing Clem to climb her way up the ranks. He's also irritated at Amanda, who's here for her own amusement. However, Amanda isn't letting some sick f*** insult her, so she grabs his head and picks him up. Crad, being an alpha male, apologizes like a little girl. Now he acknowledges Amanda, but he makes it clear to Fran that he's never going to acknowledge her, so Fran gives her a total I don't give a f*** look, so Crad tells her to run back to her mother, but Fran says that her mother is dead as f***, so Crad feels bad and shuts up and turns around. Cruz announces that Amanda is only here as an observer, so they shouldn't let the cannons distract them. He briefs them that their objective is to investigate the dungeon and the spider nest, retrieve the crystals generated by the dungeon core, and eliminate all the monsters they come across. The dungeon will have 6 floors, so Cruz tells them to proceed with caution. On their way, Teacher tells Fran what he heard from Gurus, explaining that a dungeon without a dungeon master will use its core to generate monsters and crystals, so the guild periodically sends adventurers to retrieve these resources. Along the way, Crad keeps trying to mess with Fran, but ends up making a fucking fool out of him every time, so some may think that Crad is a lowly con himself. They finally arrive at the destination, but Cruz tells them that it's late, so they will head into the dungeon early in the morning. Fran is tasked to guard the area first, followed by the Azure Guardians, Dragon Roar, and Forest Eyes. Crad approaches Fran and asks if she can guard the area despite being so weak, but Fran corrects him again, explaining she didn't climb up the ranks unfairly, so Crad brings out his huge fucking spear to challenge a little girl for a duel. Fran and Teacher decide to politely give 0 fucks, but Crad mocks Fran's huge sword, which triggers Fran and she accepts the challenge, telling Teacher that she won't let someone insult him. The others decide not to step in as they all want to see how strong Fran really is, and Crad's teammates cheer for him, as they witness Crad unleashing his ultimate Crad Roar, a move just as cool as the yellow guy's hairstyle. Before they proceed, Teacher asks Fran to set up some wind and earth barriers, that way they can detect the presence of monsters since they are technically on watch duty, but everyone is shocked at seeing Fran cast 2 elemental spells at once. Crad proudly states that he has never lost against anyone of the same rank with this long-ass spear, so he's going to go all out. He charges at Fran and attacks her, but Fran dodges his attacks, including his ultimate double spear attack. She says he's already out of breath, so Fran sneaks behind him and kicks the f*** out of his face. Fran raises her sword as she tells everyone to witness the power of her super sword, but Teacher reminds her that she didn't use the sword at all to defeat him, so Fran starts slamming the f*** out of poor Crad with the back of her sword. Amanda praises her and asks for a mock duel with her, so Fran accepts to test her strength against an A-ranked adventurer. She tells Amanda that she wants her to stop stalking her if she wins, but in exchange, Amanda asks to be called Mama if she wins instead, frightening Fran. She asks Teacher not to assist her so she can truly test her strength, as Amanda takes out her whip and attacks Fran right away. Teacher is impressed that Fran isn't blocking the attack with her sword, as the whip would take her sword. Fran keeps dodging her attacks and finally tries to land a hit, but Amanda barely dodges, so she decides to get serious by flowing mana into her whip. Now her whip is like a fucking snake with even faster attacks, as Amanda is impressed that Fran is able to dodge her single knockout attacks, but Fran is barely keeping up, so she thinks of a strategy and uses wind magic to approach Amanda. She uses Parallel Thought and Airburst to launch at Amanda, as she knows that she can reach Amanda before the whip comes back, so Amanda is defenseless. At the final moment, Amanda uses Windshield's skill to avoid the attack, but Fran prepared for that, as she fires a flare blast that she cast using Parallel Thought. Amanda is taken by surprise, and as the blast hits her, Fran gets pushed back. Everyone is in shock, but just then, Amanda walks out of the fire unscratched due to her unique skill, Spirit Affection. Fran gets back up to continue the fight, but she's taken too much damage, so Amanda heals Fran's injuries and shares that her unique skill was activated by itself, so she would have lost if it wasn't for that. This battle has made it clear to Crad that he better not fuck with the ladies anymore, and Teacher respects Fran for using the Parallel Thought skill that she dislikes, in order to get Amanda serious and force her to activate her unique skill. Fran dreams about sleeping in her mother's lap and wakes up to find herself in Amanda's lap, but Amanda tells her to relax while Cruz and others are keeping watch in her place. Fran praises Amanda for being ridiculously f***ing strong and accepts her defeat like a gentle cat, so Amanda uses the opportunity to remind her about their promise. Fran tries to respect the agreement and call her Mama, but she keeps stuttering. No matter how hard she tries, the word mama isn't coming out of her mouth, so Amanda hugs her and apologizes for teasing her. She knows that Fran's mother is still with her in her heart, so she tells her that no matter how long it takes for Fran to trust her, she can always rely on her, so Fran accepts the gentle hug and thinks it feels nice. The next morning, Fran apologizes to everyone for using an excessive amount of fire magic, but she notices that everyone is bruised. Turns out, they all got fired up and tried to battle Amanda, but no one was able to hold out as long as Fran, so she earned all of their respect. Finally, Cruz opens the passage to the dungeon with the permit in his hand, and the expedition begins. Cruz leads the way, and they reach the first floor of the dungeon, which is filled with stone pillars and obstacles. He further instructs the parties to clear a path of any possible danger, when suddenly, spiders attack them from all directions. So Crad and his team take charge and start eliminating the spiders, and Crad finally gets his minute of fame after being defeated twice by the ladies. Furion suggests they should burn the spiders, but Azure party member, Isel, suggests they should avoid using fire, hinting at Fran, as the threads are worth a lot of gold. The group proceeds to the second floor, where they continue to fight the spiders and the monsters. While the others are busy beating the fucking shit out of the monsters and clearing a path, Fran asks Amanda for free lessons on this world's combat. So Amanda uses the fighting adventurers as examples, explaining how one can infuse mana into their weapon to create an ultimate attack, which is 10 times more powerful. After defeating all the enemies on the second floor, they move to the third, where Cruz warns them of more hidden traps, but never mind, Crad and his group are already fucking crushed under some ruins after they activate the hidden traps. So another adventurer uses her brain and pushes a button that she thinks is for canceling traps, but it rains leeches and frightens the E-rank noobs. It soon turns into chaos, so Cruz uses magic to lift rock slabs and create a shield, while Isel finds all the traps and disables them. Meanwhile, Amanda continues her free classes and explains to Fran the importance of skills and magic. She explains there are 4 basic elements: earth, fire, water, and wind, and their advanced versions are ground, inferno, ocean, and storm, further saying that Fran and teacher have already mastered all the basic elements, along with inferno magic. But Amanda tells Fran that if she wants to truly master advanced magic, she needs to embrace the element fully and bathe in it naked. Fran is fucking pumped up and agrees to do so, giving teacher a heart attack, but they soon reach the 4th level, and Furion and his team take it upon themselves to clear a path, while Amanda tells Fran about complex magic, and taking Furion's wood magic as an example, she explains that his magic is a combination of earth and water magic. Similarly, many such complex magic can be created using the combination of the 2 elements. Since Fran can use fire and wind magic, she can work hard and learn thunder magic one day. After the level has been cleared, the adventurers decide to take a break, and to teacher's surprise, Fran shares her curry with Amanda to thank her for the lessons. She asks Amanda if there are more types of magic, so Amanda tells Fran there are 2 more, light and dark magic, that are usually used by the monsters. Hearing this, teacher suggests to Fran not to reveal that they can use every fucking basic element and dark and light magic. Amanda continues to talk about magic, but she fries Fran's brain due to information overload. Meanwhile, Crad asks Cruz if this really is a promotion test, because up till now, it has been way too fucking easy. But Cruz gets serious, and he tells everybody that the real test starts from the 5th level and below, because the monsters will now work in teams to defeat them, but the traps will also become more dangerous, as they now can teleport them or take their equipment. As everyone prepares themselves for the challenge, Fran really wants to fucking learn the lightning spell. She tries to convince teacher, but he thinks it's a bad idea, as the others might get suspicious of her. So Fran acts like a sweet little girl, and since teacher is a lolicon, he agrees, but makes her promise that she won't use the technique till they get back home. So teacher upgrades the basic elements to acquire thunder magic, and shares it with Fran, who forgets about her promise and is about to light this place up, but teacher screams at her to get a fucking grip. The adventurers soon reach the 5th level, and after running into various monsters and deadly traps, they manage to pass through it successfully. Cruz tells them that they will soon reach the dungeon core, which is located in the deepest part of the 6th floor, so once they recover the magic ore, it will mark the end of the investigation and the test. They soon reach the 6th level, but a never-ending wave of spiders surrounds them. While fighting, one of the adventurers gets poisoned, so Fran uses her recovery magic to heal him. Meanwhile, the spiders keep appearing, so teacher analyzes them, learning that these spiders are evolved trick spiders with deadly poison, so Fran immediately warns everybody. Upon hearing this, everybody is shocked, as trick spiders shouldn't be in a clear dungeon, but Cruz is especially worried about the spiders evolving by themselves. So he asks the E-rank adventurers to retreat to the 5th level after Amanda and Fran clear a path for them. However, 2 adventurers, Victor and Bart, are suffering from a poison that makes them act like little bitches, and they slam into Fran, causing the 3 to tumble down the steps. Before they can get on their feet, the floor starts glowing, and by the time Cruz, Amanda, and the others can reach them, Fran, Victor, and Bart are teleported, and their weapons, including Teacher, are left behind. Teacher is shocked, as Isel says that it is a complex trap of teleporting and weapon disarming, which shouldn't exist. The remaining adventurers decide to follow a map where they should be teleported, but to their shock, the 3 are not in the room as the teleportation destination has been changed. They suspect a dungeon master is behind this, but Amanda suspects there is a monster that is capable of setting and changing traps, and that monster is the trick spider's final evolved form, the trickster spider. Well, their names definitely did not evolve all that well. Meanwhile, Fran wakes up in a dingy room, farting and shitting her pants that Teacher is not with her. Suddenly, Victor and Bart bring her notice to a huge f***ing spider, as the humanoid trickster spider makes her way out laughing. Without Teacher, Fran feels powerless and starts shaking. Suddenly, the half-naked trickster spider laughs like a special kid after making a TikTok and starts attacking the 3. Meanwhile, the adventurers decide to split into 3 groups so they can find Fran and others quickly. They desperately search for them, as Amanda goes solo and uses wind magic for supersonic hearing, but still can't locate Fran, making Teacher worry for her, so he desperately thinks of a way to help Fran. He realizes that he can call a familiar using summon kin magic, but it would mean Amanda would learn about him. But he says f*** it and calls Siri, who recommends the Onyx Wolf, a wolf with life detection skills, so Teacher summons one. But the plan backfires, and the wolf attacks Teacher, throwing him several feet in the air. Amanda notices the wolf is not a threat as it is attacking another target. However, she can't leave a dangerous wolf alive, so she is about to take care of it when Teacher finally makes contact with Amanda. He telepathically tells Amanda that he is a companion of Fran and needs the wolf to find her, so he pleads with her not to take the wolf down. Amanda complies and lets the wolf go. However, the wolf is in a bad fucking mood, because the wolf's crystal heart can't handle the excessive amount of mana that Teacher poured into it, making it uncontrollable. So it feels that its master is the cause of its suffering. Teacher doesn't know what the f*** to do, but Amanda jumps in and suggests he give the wolf a name, similar to how gods give the items and monsters names to give them special powers. Teacher decides to give it a try and calls the wolf Yurushi the Darkness Wolf, but the wolf doesn't seem to hear him and attacks. Teacher yells its stupid f***ing name again, and it reaches the wolf, so the wolf's excess mana is normalized and used to transform it to become stronger. As a result, Yurushi becomes f***ing huge, but he's obedient now, making Teacher realize that names carry a magical importance in this world. Teacher tries communicating with Yurushi, and after it shows it can understand him, Teacher asks Yurushi to find Fran. Yurushi quickly picks up Fran's scent and carries Teacher in its mouth. He charges towards a blocked path, and using its shadow walk skill, Yurushi is able to pass through walls and dodge obstacles. Meanwhile, Fran is fucking wrecked, as she lies motionless on the floor after being poisoned. Her body isn't responding, and she comes in and out of consciousness, but she's upset at how useless she is without Teacher. Suddenly, Victor and Bart's screams break her chain of thought, yet she feels helpless, when all of a sudden, Teacher's words reach her and give her the strength to get up and help Moron 1 and 2. So she pulls herself up, and using her remaining strength, pulls Victor and Fart out of the sea of spiders. She starts fighting the spiders, reminding herself that she still has her arms and legs to fight with. But the poison starts taking over her body, so she slams her little f***ing head to distract her from the poison. She keeps fighting with only one intention, to make Teacher proud of her. Meanwhile, Teacher, Yurushi, and Amanda make their way to a secret passage while avoiding the traps. Amanda uses her tornado blast to make a path into the secret passage. However, it is covered with spider webs and hundreds of spiders, so Teacher decides to use fire magic along with all of his mana to launch himself towards Fran, and just as Fran is about to be killed, he strikes the trickster spider's body and pushes it back. However, the trickster spider manages to escape, but Teacher doesn't give a fuck. He focuses on Fran, who is injured and poisoned, so using healing magic, he provides Fran with an antidote. Fran is grateful to Teacher for saving her, and even though his blade is still red hot after using fire magic, Fran doesn't mind and hugs him, and Teacher tells Fran that he is very proud of her. After the emotional reunion, Teacher introduces Fran to Urushi, and Fran immediately f***ing loves fluffy Urushi. But now that Fran is saved, Amanda asks who the sword really is, so Fran asks Teacher if she can tell Amanda about him as she trusts her. After thinking about it, Teacher says yes, so Fran tells Amanda all about Teacher. After listening to their story, Amanda is overjoyed and realizes Teacher is an intelligence weapon, so she squishes the f*** out of Fran because she is happy that Fran trusts her enough to tell her secret. In all the chaos, they forget about Idiots 1 and 2, and suddenly, they realize the two will soon be in the afterlife if they are not given an antidote, so Fran and Teacher use healing magic on the two adventurers. The two soon gain consciousness, so Amanda asks them if they remember anything, just in case they heard Fran and Teacher's secret, but the two are safe from Amanda's fists as they lost consciousness way before Amanda and Teacher arrived. The group decides to find others, but because Victor and Bart haven't fully recovered, Urushi and Amanda have to pick up these two heavy loads and carry them back. They soon reach the meet-up area but can't find anybody, when suddenly Fran and Teacher hear the shrieks of a very angry trickster spider, but when they turn, they find a bright light with a whiteout emerging from the light. Meanwhile, the other adventurers are struggling to fight the never-ending spiders, as most of their team members are down with poison or are trapped in the spider webs. Suddenly, they hear something heavy approaching as a trap activates on its own, and they come face to face with a gigantic ball rolling in their direction. With no time to react, they prepare to die, but it gets split into 1,000 pieces as Fran arrives right on time to shred the ball, and Crad's jaw drops upon seeing Fran on a huge doggy. But Fran doesn't stop there and uses her signature move, Arson Master level 100, to roast the shit out of the spiders, as Amanda joins in, and using wind magic, creates a tornado to eliminate more spiders. Motivated by the two women single-handedly taking down the enemy, Crad and his team join in and help take down the remaining spiders. Meanwhile, Farhan and others trapped in the webs feel embarrassed for not being able to defend themselves, and are greeted by Terua, a guardian spirit in the form of a white elf that Fran and the others met earlier. Terua, however, is f***ing pissed after being called a monster by Fran. While others are busy taking care of the spiders, Fran targets the trickster spider, but before she can attack, the trickster spider wraps herself in webs and creates a sphere around her. So, Fran uses her flare blast to make an opening. However, the trickster spider pulls all the spiders to attack Fran. With no choice left, Teacher and Fran combine their powers, creating a thunderbolt, as they strike the trickster spider with a stun bolt, paralyzing the enemy. Meanwhile, Terua uses his power to energize and heal the adventurers so they can actually be f***ing useful. Seeing Fran fight like that, Amanda couldn't be prouder. She is amazed that Fran has learned to use thunder already, but just then, the trickster spider pulls out an attack out of nowhere, sending Fran, Teacher, and Urushi flying. Amanda is in horror, and suddenly, the image of two cat children, Flamia and Kinnan, appears before her eyes. She remembers she didn't teach them how to fight, even though they wanted to become adventurers, because she felt they shouldn't go down that path and wanted them to live a long, peaceful life. But this decision backfired, and the two lost their lives. All Amanda wanted was to protect them, but she couldn't, so she reminds herself that she will not repeat her mistake and let Fran lose her life here. Fran charges towards the spider, but the air shifts around Fran, so she stops to find Amanda furious. Amanda activates her storm spear and wipes away the trickster spider's entire existence along with the crystal. Everybody stares in shock at the power of an A-rank adventurer, but Amanda runs towards Fran to hug her, but Fran is sad as f*** since she wanted to take revenge herself, sending Amanda into a cloud of gloom. The adventurers soon find an opening that leads to the core of the dungeon, and while they walk into it, Amanda pleads with Fran not to hate her. As soon as they reach the core, they are in for a surprise. The core is full of colorful crystals, so they start collecting. Cruz instructs, specifically looking at Crad, not to keep the crystals for themselves, making Crad yell at him to save his image. Meanwhile, Isel inspects the settings of the dungeon. He suspects that something went wrong, because according to the settings, only the trap spiders should have spawned, so they wonder if they should clear the entire dungeon of the evolved species, but Amanda suggests they should let the guild master decide. While everybody is collecting the crystals, Crad tries to thank Fran for saving his team members, but Fran sends fire blast at his head because there was a spider behind him, so he yells at Fran for burning half his f***ing hair and decides he can't bring himself to like her. In the evening, everyone sits around a bonfire outside the dungeon to celebrate their victory. Fran sits with Amanda and tells her that she plans to become an evolved black cat, as Amanda is again reminded of the two black cats who lost their lives, so she tells Fran that she will support her, but she shouldn't push herself too much. The next day, the adventurers return to Alessa, and Fran and Teacher go to meet the guild master. The guild master is surprised to see a C-rank familiar with Fran, but Yurushi is in its downsized form, so no one freaks out just yet. Fran still feels she couldn't do much, but the guild master disagrees, saying she has done much to prove her worth, and he decides to issue her a permit to access Olmut's dungeon. He asks her to check her class before leaving, and he admits he will miss her, so Fran goes to check her class as instructed and stands before a crystal, which announces her class has been changed to Sword Magus. After getting a new guild card specifying her new class, Fran and Teacher visit Gurus at his shop, and Fran is presented with a new black cat armor he had been working on. Fran looks good in her new armor, so Gurus tells them that every piece of clothing is a named item, so they improve her stats and are blessed by the gods. Fran looks happy, however, Teacher has a problem with her belly button showing and almost strangles Gurus for making such a revealing item. So Gurus tries to explain that black cats like lighter clothing that helps them easily move. But Teacher is not yet convinced, so he asks how she would protect her belly. So naturally Gurus takes a gigantic f***ing hammer and strikes Fran on the belly, but the belt absorbs the shock, so Fran doesn't feel anything. He adds that the armor will not only protect her against heavy attacks, but also against instant kill attacks. Both Teacher and Fran thank Gurus for his work, and humble Gurus appreciates the gratitude. He asks if they're going to Olmut, as he is also moving there, conveniently. But Fan and Teacher are taking the sea route, which dwarfs hate since they can't swim, so he asks them to find him once they reach Olmut. The next day, the adventurers of Alessa gather to see off Fran. They all wish her the best in their own way, so Fran thanks everyone and turns to Amanda, who is teary-eyed, and says the next time she meets Amanda, she will not lose to her bitch ass. Amanda controls her emotions and says she will be looking forward to it, and whispers to Teacher to take care of Fran. Soon after, Fran mounts Yurushi, but as they start leaving, Teacher reminds Fran that she never called Amanda Mama, something Amanda has been asking since day one, but Fran blatantly replies that Amanda is not her f***ing mother, but just this once, she turns and calls her Amanda before bidding goodbye and flying off on Yurushi. This gesture touches Amanda, and she can hardly control her tears, as she remembers Kinnan and Flamia, and feels happy that their child, Fran, is living wonderfully. Meanwhile, Furion visits the guildmaster, who turns out to be his uncle, and shows his displeasure at almost being eliminated in the dungeon. The guildmaster says he should blame August Allsand for this, because they arrested an adventurer who confessed that he worked for August, and under his orders, used an evolution potion on the spiders. But the guildmaster changes the topic and asks Furion what his guardian spirit thinks of Fran, so Furion calls forth Tarua, who tells the guildmaster that Fran has a pure heart and is curious about everything. He also mentions that Fran often talks to herself, but doesn't hold any evil intentions, so the guildmaster breathes a sigh of relief that she is not a spy sent from Rado, the Guild of the North, and admits that Fran is an extraordinary black cat. And that brings us to the end of Season 1 of Reincarnated as a Sword. Till next time.